What if we take Groundhog Day and turn it into a cosmic horror movie? I mean, it's pretty easy if you think about it. First, we just take this iconic scene from the beloved 1993 comedy masterpiece, but instead of letting the day play out, we do this. And we keep it going and going and going and going. Fortunately, we don't have to imagine what kind of nightmare movie this will be, because a cosmic horror movie, The Endless, has us covered. Now, there's something amazing going on with Groundhog Day and The Endless. That's because despite the massive divergence in genre and tone, they complement each other so well. They fit each other so well that sometimes you can contextualize what's happening in The Endless with what's happening in Groundhog Day, and it goes both ways. So please join me as we dive in deeper into the movies, time loops, and how they're used. This is actually part of a series I'm working on called Comprehending Cosmic Horror. Thank you for clicking, and if you like what you see, please like and please subscribe. Now, Groundhog Day is a cornerstone of cinema. It's a movie that practically defined time loop stories. It does this with sharp comedic wit and a certain kind of lightheartedness, but it never shies away from the darker moments that might surround a unique circumstance like this. However, because of the genre itself, you never really get to linger in those dark moments, and they never really hit quite as hard, and that is by design. However, in The Endless, you get to approach those moments and examine them through different angles because of that tonal shift that the genre brings. That's because the cosmic horror angle that explores a time loop doesn't use comedic moments to engage the audience. It's quite the opposite. It's the implications. It's the existential dread that comes with these unique circumstances that keep the viewers hooked. What it does is focus on the nightmarish consequences of actually being inside the loop. But in order to illustrate these better, we need to dive into the movies themselves. Now, let's look at how Groundhog Day approached the mechanic of the time loop. There was no cause explained. However, it is undeniable that there was a force preventing Phil, the protagonist, from exiting Punxsutawney. From there, they keep it simple. They define the boundaries by having a snowstorm surround the town, setting a limit where he can actually go. It's a soft limit, but because of that, they cannot leave the boundaries set by that unknown force. Every 6 a.m., the day resets for Phil, and nobody remembers what happened. Rinse and repeat, simple. But now, let's compare that to how The Endless handles its own time loop. Much like Groundhog Day, the time loop in The Endless has its own boundary. However, unlike the comedy movie, its cosmic horror nature takes this to another level by adding more areas with a time loop. How many? We aren't exactly sure. What we do know is that there are these strange markers that form a circle around an area, and that serves as a boundary for that particular time loop. It could range from the size of a large commune to a single person tent. However, there's an even worse nightmare scenario here. It's that the time loops are seemingly random. It could range from a week, 3 days like for the commune, or maybe even just 2 seconds. Also, unlike Groundhog Day, in The Endless, we're also given glimpses of the invisible entity that is causing all of this. Humans can't see it, but it can see us. It's not afraid to interact with the characters, and when it wants to, it lets its presence be known, which actually happens a lot. The entity can even communicate through sharing pictures or photographs. When those were taken, we don't know. It could be from the past, it could be from the present, or it could even be from the future. Now, since the success of Groundhog Day, there have been a lot of stories trying to use the time loop system as a hook for audiences. Personal favorites of mine that aren't these two are Palm Springs and Edge of Tomorrow. However, in all of those, the time loop isn't really the story. The time loop is a plot device that serves as a sandbox for the characters to move their own stories forward. Essentially, the time loop isn't really about the time loop itself, but instead, it's about the characters within it. You can think of it like a racetrack where the characters are driving cars over and over and over again for each lap. They're all trying to reach the finish line, which is essentially the ending. So basically, a time loop story is a character-driven story. Pun intended. Please like and subscribe. But given that, how do Groundhog Day and The Endless tackle these stories in their own way while still resonating with the other? Like I said, both of these are time loop stories. However, they do use the mechanic in different ways. In Groundhog Day, Phil gets trapped inside of a time loop. However, in The Endless, Justin and Aaron are the ones observing and interacting with the people stuck inside. So basically, one shows us what it feels like to be inside, while the other is showing us how it looks from the outside. And this is where both movies tie in together. When Phil started the time loop in Groundhog Day, there was a phase where he couldn't accept his reality, which is pretty natural. And while the two protagonists of The Endless don't experience this, they meet a solitary woman in the commune who was not engaging with the others. She was very avoidant of the other members and was very cautious with Justin. Later on in in the story, we find her trying to outrun the reset of the loop, just as how Phil initially started trying to escape Punxsutawney. Both were in a state of denial. Phil even asks one of his drinking buddies, "What would you do if you were stuck in one place and every day was exactly the same and nothing you did mattered?" To which his drinking buddy replied, "Well, that about sums it up for me." Eventually, however, Phil does accept what is happening to him. He uses this time to manipulate events throughout the day and make it work in his favor. The commune members in the Endless were initially the same. They've accepted the reality and are making the most of it. They've taken up activities that they're trying to master, like tailoring, magic tricks, and even crafting beer. For both movies, they make it seem so desirable. It's like you yourself want to be trapped in one of these time loops so that you can never age and you can continuously improve yourself over and over and over again. They make it seem like it's some kind of superpower. However, in both movies, this is also where we begin seeing the cracks. In the end, Justin begins digging deeper and deeper into what is really happening and starts to encounter the other people who were also trapped in the time loop. These people were experiencing events determined by their environment and were taking it in wildly different ways. One of these people was Carl. Trapped in a time loop of 3 hours, he tries over and over to just end it all. Later on in the movie, we begin seeing some of the cult members showing signs of wariness as well. And in their own way, they begin trying to warn Aaron not to get stuck just like them. One of them tells him, "You don't think that most of us have something that we could leave behind? This place protects us from some of it, but history repeats itself regardless." The old skipping record plays on. Basically, what this tells me is that if you were unhappy before the time loop, you're still going to be unhappy when you're in it. The way Groundhog Day did this was by denying Phil the love of Rita, the only real thing he ever wanted all that time. After being denied by her over and over and over again, we also see him repeatedly trying to end his time in the loop to no avail. It's not until he approaches things with the sincerity that he lacked that Rita even gave him a chance. And for what it wasn't even a grand moment or gesture that led him to changing his approach. It was something as simple as flicking cards into a hat with Rita. It's here that she asks him, "Is this what you do with eternity?" and follows it up by telling him that it's all about how he looks at things. It's only here that Phil begins to change his approach, and instead of changing what's beyond his control, he begins to focus on the things that will change him. Because if you think about it, the only real change happening in this loop is what changes inside of him. This pursuit for something real is reflected in the Endless when Justin, in an errand for Carl, meets the gun nut tweaker that he needs a gun from. Turns out, the gun nut tweaker wasn't alone, and he was with the husband of the blonde-haired girl in the camp. The difference between the two is that he's past denial and disillusionment, and now he's trying to pursue something real. He chained the gun nut tweaker to try and get him sober, even though he knows that it will all reset in a week. Repeatedly, he tries to find a way to get out of the loop and to try and find the right configuration that might get them out. All this was in an effort to see the real things in his life, which were his son and wife. The pursuit of something real is ultimately what changes the protagonists for both movies. There's another quote from The Endless that just puts it into perspective. As a de facto cult leader began questioning his own life, he says, "Can you have power over yourself if you give up any amount of authority to something else?" This, again, ties in so neatly with Groundhog Day. For Phil, he stopped using the time loop as a crutch and the reset button for whenever he made mistakes. Instead, he started improving himself in tangible ways through knowledge and skills that actually mattered. They were abilities that would not only improve himself, but would also impact others. This is how he truly seized control over his life. For Justin and Aaron, they began with redefining their own relationship and actually letting each other live the lives they want. Phil completed his character arc inside of the time loop, while Justin and Aaron completed theirs by learning from the people inside it. But this is the thing that surprised me the most when I rewatched both movies. Upon rewatching The Endless, it occurred to me how optimistic and hopeful the story actually was. From what I recalled, all I could think about was how sorry I was for those who were left behind. I didn't realize how much impact they had on the brothers themselves. This was highlighted through the last shot of the members smiling and knowing that the brothers were able to get away. This optimism and hopefulness was shared by Groundhog Day as well. As Phil was able to truly change, he was able to impact those around him positively. He was able to help all around town by the end, and he was able to show Rita a different, more polished side of himself that would not be possible without the time loop. And while we don't know the condition to break the loop, he wakes up beside Rita with a whole new outlook on the world. For Justin and Aaron, they have finally begun to respect each other's boundaries, and Justin was even able to let Aaron do his own thing without trying to control him. Now, I have to ask, would you want to be trapped inside the time loop? Because for me, honestly, if it were like the Groundhog Day scenario and I had access to everything I have now, well, there are a lot lot of movies, books, and video games that I want to get to, so on the other hand, without the option of getting out, what would be the point? Obviously, for the protagonists of both movies, that option wasn't readily available to them. We don't really know what ended the time loop in Groundhog Day, and we don't really know if there is some sort of configuration that will end the time loop in the Endless. Either way, for both movies, the character arcs of our protagonists ultimately culminated into them doing something real and tangible. They finally did something that mattered, and at the end of the day, that's the point. Hope you enjoyed this video, and for more comprehending cosmic horror, there's a video right here. Hope to see you there, and thank you for watching.